and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. In this episode, I'll be discussing the 1999 Mike Myers spy moof and sequel to the original Austin Powers movie, 1997's The International Man of Mystery, Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, as directed again by Roach. In this movie, we catch up with Austin, as played by Mike Myers, now living a married life, if you like, in the 90s, directly following the ending of the last movie, where he was seen to be married to Vanessa Kensington, as played by Elizabeth Hurley. However, his nuptials don't go quite to plan, and we see Vanessa bumped from the series in inglorious fashion, with a great nod to the last movie. Single again, Austin takes back up his notorious swinging lifestyle, only to find, when questioning, if you like, in that sense, one of Dr. Evil's agents, he's lost his mojo. Turns out, Dr. Evil has found a way to travel back to 1969, when Austin was still frozen in cryostasis, and has found a way to infiltrate the Ministry of Defense to steal Austin's mojo. We then follow Austin back in time to 1969, we're going around a bit, to foil Dr. Evil's new plans for world domination, using one of the grooviest time travel devices this side of the phone booth from Bill and Ted, a Flower Power VW Beetle, time travel in style. Here he meets Felicity Shagwell. The names are excellent, still on tour with where they were in the first movie, as played this time around by Heather Graham, who is pretty much the female version of 1960s Austin, working for the CIA, the American version, if you like, and who is also on a mission to stop Dr. Evil's plans. Will they be successful in returning Austin's mojo back to his body and foiling Dr. Evil's plans? Well, surely we'll have some fun in finding out, right? So, for me, I remember when I last watched this, you know, it was quite a few years ago, to be honest. And I do remember being in absolute stitches. That is definite. I would have easily have stated this was my favourite Austin Powers movie, hands down. However, after watching it again, and pretty much directly kind of following the first Austin Powers movie, I would say that this was nowhere near what I remembered. I was nowhere near as impressed. It was still fun, all told. Don't get me wrong. I can't say that I didn't still find it funny as I did. You know, I'm not trying to rant on this one. Some of it still hysterically so. You know, it had me in stitches, but not to the same extent that I did for the original. The jokes and the references in the original just seem so much more constructed and cleverly thought out than they did in this particular movie. Indeed, some of them felt like they went on far too long, were too repetitive, and if I'm honest, and I suppose this is kind of a product of watching the movie in today's world, quite offensive and degrading at times. Kind of belittling as well, and taking pot shots at others' expense, where the first movie managed to get its laughs through utilising some great parody and pop culture references, this does stoop more to the lowest common denominator, and playing more on poking fun at characters, at its characters, than really trying to give us something more than the original. In this, we do have two new characters for this movie. Fat Bastard, a grossly overweight Scotsman, who is played by, in his third role in the movie, Mike Myers, and Mini-Me, a clone of Dr. Evil, but only a fraction of his size, as played by Vern Troyer. I'm sorry to say that I just didn't find the comedy involving these two characters funny this time around. But, like I have said, this is probably now that I'm older, to be fair, and I can see just how hurtful some of the jokes aimed at these characters actually are. I mean, you have a Scotsman. For one, is overweight. For 2, who likes to eat babies. And then pretty much has the film's monopoly on toilet humour. And eating disorders. You know? And then there's Mini-Me, who, although being an adult, because of his size, is treated like a baby throughout, and an animalistic one at that, you know. So I think mainly I kind of was just disappointed at myself, given that there was a time when I did find all of this funny, you know. But that's not to say that it's a total waste of time, okay? It still has some genuinely funny moments, and this time around, choosing in part to kind of parody the Star Wars and Back to the Future series, and the likes of, like, you know, 1979's James Bond movie Moonraker. I think that's got quite a big kind of influence in the movie. With, indeed, another play on the film's title, The Spy Who Shagged Me, from 1977's The Spy Who Loved Me, of course. It is indeed another innuendo-filled escapade, and none more so really than now the kind of running joke making light of Dr. Evil's rocket. Looking basically shaped like a giant Johnson, which is even better than in the first movie, in my opinion, you know. It is simply side-splitting, that particular scene. That is clever. Rude, crude, but clever. There is also the moment that the US actually find out that they have a problem in the form of Dr. Evil's return. And they find out not via the usual intelligence channels, but via Jerry Springer. Excellent, you know? The film does have a lot of plot holes, you know, from start to finish. And with reference to the first movie, it doesn't kind of match. But deliberately so, I think. Which I thought was a fantastic touch, not to kind of take itself too seriously. Indeed, it's what the series is kind of built upon. It doesn't always have to make sense, you know, and this is even highlighted in the film when Austin tries to get his head around time travel. And rather than even try to understand, he looks at the camera and just tells us as the audience to just enjoy the ride. And I think the movie simply throws any rules regarding time travel right out the window. And I would agree. When it comes down to this, just sit back, switch off, and enjoy a glimpse into the swinging 60s, you know? I would say that the movie does take its time to get warmed up. It's not quite as punchy as the original one. And that pretty much, you know, the best bits, they're kind of all concentrated in the last third of the film. But it certainly has its moments throughout. And in saying this, I couldn't do a review of this movie without mentioning Heather Graham. As the new kind of female character and Austin's new love interest, she had some pretty big shoes to fill from Elizabeth Hurley. You know, who was in the first movie, of course. But she does make one fantastic entrance in this movie, you know, really marking her character as her own from the very onset. I don't mind in saying that I did indeed have quite the crush on Heather Graham for a while after seeing this film for the first time. You know, as I think, to be fair, quite a bit of the world did. Her whole fun-loving attitude as Felicity Shagwell in this movie, you know, the peppy 60s vibe and her vibrant outfits were one of the standout elements of the movie. Absolutely. She does play the role very cheesy, you know, but it works given the nature of the film. And I think she has some real great chemistry alongside Myers in this movie. It was interesting to kind of see how the tables were turned as well on Austin. How he would actually react with the shoe on the other foot, so to speak. In fact, when the film isn't, you know, trying to be lewd and crude and rude, it does actually have some fun and endearing moments between the characters. And the parts that where we see the original characters return, such as Dr. Evil's son Scott, as played by Seth Green again, Frau Bissiner, as played by Mindy Sterling, and Basil Exposition, as played by Michael York, they really have some great on-screen moments, bringing on, you know, building very much so on what we had come to expect from each of them in the first movie. In this respect, the film doesn't disappoint. Overall, it's not a bad movie. You know, I hopefully I haven't bashed it too much. It's not a bad movie. It is a good movie. It is extremely funny. Just not quite to the extent that I remembered. And I think that's the reason why I'm just a little bit disappointed is all. And not kind of in context with what would perhaps be considered funny today. There's certainly less of the parody here that made the first movie great, and much more reliance on toilet humour. Sometimes bluntly so. The comedy doesn't always hit the spot, and it's not thick and fast by any stretch. And indeed is often obtained by taking cheap pot shots at the expense of others. But it does have its moments, it really does, especially when it plays on the franchise's existing base of characters who remain on absolute top form. Whilst it may not have as much going for it as its predecessor, it just doesn't seem as cleverly constructed as I remembered, you know, from my initial viewings. When you do put it, you know, up against The International Man of Mystery, which was an absolutely fantastic film, it's still a great film, which you can sit down, take your brain out, which is pretty much a prerequisite for watching these films, and thoroughly enjoy. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. We have absolutely loved having you here at SciFirst MovieTalk. We would love to have you back. But yes, most of all, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.